So this is the second week in a series we've started called Yeah, You Did, where we're learning how to make better decisions with fewer regrets. And I want to open today with a story. So when I was a youth pastor back in the day, when I was in Manitoba, this is the Pan Am pool that you can see there behind me. The Pan Am pool was one of my favorite locations to take kids from the youth group, because what we would do, this isn't like a water slide kind of deal. This is you get to play water polo in the shallow end, or you do your laps and you get to play on that sucker. You get to play on those platforms. And so as soon as we get there, the kids are wanting to show off, right? So they do their laps and they're like, the lifeguards, yep, you're good. And then they'd run over to the 3-meter platform, and all the kids would like lemmings coming like off the edge of this thing, just like this. Anybody can do the 3-meter, and every once in a while somebody would get like caught, and they didn't want to do it, but there's too many people behind them, and then off they'd go. And then what happens is some people are like, there, I did it, I jumped, and we're gonna go play water polo. But then there's a slightly smaller group that makes their way up to the 5-meter platform, and at the 5-meter platform, it's not like lemmings. Now you hesitate. Now you got to calculate how you're going to land and all that stuff. Of course, there's that one kid that just runs off and goes and gainers himself, and he doesn't care. He's not smart enough to know he's in pain. So he just does this thing, but most of the kids jump off. A few turn back, and then they move up to the 7.5-meter platform. And there are fewer kids up there. And there's a few that get to the top, look to the edge and go, nope. And they turn around, they just turn around and go, water polo sounds awesome. And they go back down. But they're the few then that wrestle with this, and go, I can totally do this. And then they, make themselves jump off the edge. Some kids take 5 or 6 minutes to do it. And then even fewer kids make the trek to the 10-meter platform. I mean, that's pretty serious. You can see just how tall that is. This is for Olympic diving. That's what the Pan Am pool is for. And so you get to the top, and then this is where you weed out serious amounts of people. So you get some people walking to the edge and going, and literally you can just see them go, and they just come apart, and then they crawl back to the ladder. And there are other people that stand there frozen, going, I've come this far. Now what am I going to do? And of course, now their friends are going, dude, do it. You got this. And they're like, I don't got this, but I have to. So then there's the same kid, down, and he's good. But so what ends up happening is at the end of the night, there's this girl. I'm going to call her Danielle because that's her name. And she had spent the entire, once she had made her way up, 3 and 5 and 7.5, she spent the rest of the evening, like we were there 2 hours, on that platform going, whoa. Like she was just so sad to watch. And at the end, all of us are done. They are closing the pool. We are all out of the water going, Danielle. And she's at the edge, and they're going, and the lifeguard's going, hey, you gonna jump? And I'm yelling, if you don't jump, you will regret it. Now, never mind that the last girl who jumped made this whoop sound when she hit, which didn't do wonders for Danielle. But Danielle's at the edge, and she actually pulled back from the edge and didn't jump. After all of that, and then on the way home, the bus ride, it's like an hour and a half home, all the kids are like, yeah, did you see that woohoo kid? And it's like he died, but Danielle lived, but all of this. But she's going all the way home. You can just see it. Just she's going, I wish I jumped. Because we live out in the country, right? And now we're not going to get out there anytime soon. She's like, I wish I would have jumped. How many of you know that when it comes to making better decisions with fewer regrets, that fear plays a major role in this whole thing? I mean, some of the regrets, and we're going to talk about this next week, are because we do things we wish we hadn't have done, right? But then there's that whole category of things we wish we had done, but we gave into fear, and now we're kicking ourselves because what would life be like if I had done that one thing? We're going to talk about that today, and we're going to talk about this thing about regret because here, I'm just going to lead with this. Did you know, and see if you agree with me on this, giving into fear is the shortest path to mediocrity. It is. It is. It's about as quick as plummeting off that 10-meter platform. But instead, you didn't do it, right? It's like, how many of you wake up in the morning saying, I just want to be beige. I just want to be mediocre. I don't want to be anything special. I don't want to make a difference. I don't want to make more money. I don't want to get better, make better friendships. I don't want to progress in my life. I'm just happy exactly the way I am. Now, we're going to talk about a guy this morning named David. And then the point we're picking up David, he's a guy in the Bible. He eventually will become King David. But at this point, David is probably about 15 years old. And the reason I know that is because, as you might know, in Jewish culture, you're kind of considered a man at around age 12. And he's called a young man in this story. And then there's talking about older people than that. And the part of the story, it describes him as just like a little kid almost. And so he's probably a teenager. So teenagers, pay attention. Young adults, he's no older than you for sure. And at this point in his life, he has already figured out the secret of living with courage. And he's got so much courage that as I'm telling the story, I hope each and every one of us today are going, I gotta get me some of that. Whatever he's got, I want that. Because David left a life of mediocrity, like in the dust, at a very early age. So we're going to learn from David. Now, let me just set up the story. It's found in 1 Samuel chapter 17. And in this story, the Israelites' army are camped up on the edge of a hill, overlooking a valley, and on the other side of the valley are the Philistines. And the Philistines are the nemesis nation of the Israelites. It's like throughout the Old Testament, it's like, oh, the Philistines. They're just always there. They're always in their face. The Philistines, the Philistines. But here's this battle that Israel is prepared to fight, and the Philistines are prepared to fight. They are perched on the verge of war until something happens. Out from the ranks of the Philistines steps a giant named Goliath. You've probably heard that. Even if you're not a Bible person, you've probably heard of the story David and Goliath. Maybe you've wondered where that came from. We're going to talk about that story today. So Goliath stands over 9 feet tall. The tip of his spear is something like 15 pounds, just the tip of his spear. This is a monstrosity of a man. And he steps out from his ranks, past the battle line towards the Israelites, down into the valley, and challenges them. Some of you know this story well. He's saying, look, you pick a fighter that will come and face me. And if he defeats me, we'll serve you. No problem. But if I defeat him, which, let's be honest, is exactly what's going to happen, you will serve us the rest of your days. And the Israelites are like, oh, because this guy is he's out of proportion. He doesn't look right. There's something wrong with this dude. He's too big. And then they actually melt in fear. And then Goliath is mocking the God of Israel. He's bringing down curses. He's baiting them. Come on, can't anyone face me? And he comes out every day for 40 days. And every time he comes out, the Israelites retreat a little bit further. And the king, Saul, who is actually a head and shoulders taller than anyone else in Israel, is hiding in his tent because he doesn't want to face the guy. Because everyone's looking around going, well, I'm too little, but hey, we got a guy. He's like really tall. And Saul's like, no, he's walking around on his knees with his shoes down here just to, look, I'm not tall enough either. And he's hiding in his tent, and they're paralyzed by fear. And then David walks into this situation. Now, before I get into what happens next, I just want to point out the obvious, but it's going to be really important for all of us this morning, and that is that fear takes the shape of battles that we don't feel like we're equipped to fight. So I want to ask you this morning, which battle in your life, which decision, which thing is looming in your life that you feel like you're not equipped to fight? That's your Goliath. Probably everybody has one. And if you don't have one now, it's probably because you pulled back from a battle line and didn't fight him before. So somebody, everywhere in your life, somewhere in your life, you've got a Goliath, at least one. And this is the thing about fear. Fear is not just an emotion, it's a thing. It's a spiritual power, and it takes shape. It incarnates in the form of battles we don't feel equipped to fight. So what is your Goliath? Okay, so with all of that as the setup, you ready? This is crazy town. Okay, so David shows up as a little kid. He's bringing sandwiches to his brothers because they haven't heard from them in a little while. The battle should have been long over, but remember, it's been delayed for 40 days. And Dad's like, just send them something, see what's going on, bring back a report. And so David arrives, and he hears Goliath. As he arrives, Goliath is doing his bellowing thing, and the Israelites are like, ah. And so David says, ask the men standing near him, who's this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Like, what's happening here? Why are we retreating? What David said was overheard and reported to Saul, who's been hiding in his tent, and Saul sent for him. Now look at the courage of this guy. This kid walks into a culture of fear. Everybody's afraid, everybody. And here's the kid who doesn't know better because he's a teenager, and God's going to use him in fantastic ways. He walks in and goes, why are you guys so afraid? So that he's called now before the king of Israel. This should be scary too, right? Okay, so he's there, and David said to Saul, hey, let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him. I'll do it. If you won't do what a king is supposed to do and stand up for his people, I'll do it. Now again, this is crazy town kind of courage. He walks into this, he's looking at everyone's afraid, everyone's withering with fear. In fact, they're paralyzed by fear. But David's not approaching the situation from the same vantage point. He's empowered by courage. He's empowered by courage. He says, I'll go and fight him. And Saul replied, you're not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You're only a young man. This guy has been a warrior from his youth. He's been eating guys for breakfast just like you since before you were born. You can't do it. But David is not paralyzed by fear. He's empowered by courage. Again, in this moment, I just want you to tap in a little bit. I want you to start even asking God, whatever he's got, I want me some of that. Because when I face my giants, I'm the guy that withers. I'm the girl that shrinks back from the challenge. Or sometimes I'm good at challenges, but then I meet my match. See, like the Israelites, they were prepared to fight. They were there to fight. But then suddenly their fear took the shape of a battle they didn't feel equipped to fight, and they started to retreat from their calling. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. Watch this. This is crazy. This is his secret. Okay? David said to Saul, this is why some of you are here, right here. David said to Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep, and when a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, well, I went after it. I struck it. I rescued the sheep from its mouth. But then I stole their supper, right? So when it turned on me, I seized it, now he's talking about the lion, by its hair. Do you see the courage here? It's not even, like this. He's like, grabs it by its hair, struck it and killed it. And your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. And this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them. because he's defied the armies of the living God. And the Lord, he rescued me from the paw of the lion, and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. Don't even worry about it. Now, here's the first secret of his courage. He's got an if, then this faith. If God did this, and if God did this, God will do this. That lion, no problem. That bear, no problem. In other words, the 3-meter diving board, no problem. The 5-meter diving board, no problem. Granted, Goliath is like a 10-meter, but I can see that if I can do the 3 and I can do the 5, with the power of God, that 10 shouldn't be a problem either. Do you see what he's doing? He's using the things he's seen God do already. If then this. If then this. In other words, he understood that little victories prophesy bigger breakthroughs. Now, how many of you understand? Tori's like, I'm in. It's like, I'm going to do an altar call later. He'll be like, oh, come on. Okay, so how many of you understand that the things that God does in your life, however he breaks through, the ways that he comes through for you, the things he helps you overcome, the battles that you win. Oh, I'm bleeding. Look at that. Cool. Okay. The blood that you shed from the tips of your fingers and survive, paper cut, all of that. He's saying, get a good look at what I just did there, because that's the kind of thing I can do. And I'm going to leverage what I just did for you here to help you trust me for even bigger things in the future. So David walks into this situation, and everyone's going, this is too big, it's too big, we can't even do it. And David's going, whoa, back up. Lion, like 3-meter, bear, 5-meter, 10-meter, no problem. God's got this. Now, how many of you have ever found yourself, does someone have a Band-Aid? I'm really like, this is awesome. It's like, this is my battle wound. It's so good. Okay, so anyways, how many of you find yourself in a situation where like finances are tight or something, and then you realize, oh my goodness, the finances are tight, what's going to happen? But he's provided for you before. Like you prayed for it before and it happened. You prayed for it again, it happened. You prayed for it again, and now you're still at the 5-meter and you're going, oh, what's going to happen? I'm going to bleed to death. Okay. It's a Superman?
Because I am a grandma.
This is, boom, sucker. Lorna to the rescue. She also has candy. Okay, so. How many of you languish in the current battle that you're fighting, and you forget to leverage the thing that God's already done in your life against that thing you're facing now? David didn't have that problem. He's like 15 years old, whatever. He's already learned to go if then, then this. That is awesome. That is awesome. Now, what happens next? I love this story. Watch this. Okay, so after this conversation, Saul tries to convince him to wear his own armor. He's like, forget it, I'm just going to go as I am. Then David, watch, took his staff in his hand, and he chose 5 smooth stones from the stream. And he put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and with his sling in his hand, approached the Philistine. Now remember where we are. Let's do this geography lesson. Israel's on top of a hill over here. There's a valley in between, and there's a hill over here, and the Philistines are here. Where's the stream? Is it at the top? It's at the bottom. So David leaves Saul with a staff and an empty sling. Told you this kid's tough, right? And he walks halfway towards Goliath, or wherever that stream was, pauses, and Goliath isn't even paying attention at this point, really. Pauses, bends down, right? And he comes up with these 5 stones, and Goliath is probably still going, no, really, send somebody to fight me. And that's the guy. This courage is crazy. Now here, look at what he has. In his hand, he's got a staff. In his hand, he's got a sling. And he's also got this pouch. So he walks towards the giant without a way to fight him, trusting that if he takes the step of faith, that by the time he gets there, he will. Wow! That's awesome. You know what David understood? He understood that what God has put in my hands is enough when I put myself in his hands. It's enough. That's why when Saul said, here, wear my armor, he's like, no, it's okay, it doesn't fit. I am who I am. And what God has done in my life up to this point, the person he's made me, the things literally in my hands are enough to face the battle that I'm fighting. And if it isn't, by the time I get there, it will be. Oh, that's good. That is really good. Because many of us, we're going, no, give me some of that Saul armor. Give me this stuff. And when we face a battle, we say, God, I can't fight this if I don't have more friends in my corner. If I don't have the moral support. I don't have enough money in the bank. I don't have enough. I don't have. I'm not equipped to fight the battle. And God's going, no, you don't understand. If you're facing the battle, you're equipped to fight it. Because if you give yourself to me, if you put yourself in my hands, whatever's in your hands, I'm going to use for this breakthrough. That's really good news. Really good news. So, here's what happens next. Meanwhile, the Philistine, with his shield bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. What happens when you're saying, God did this, God did that, so he's gonna help me right now. And whatever's in my hands is enough. And you start walking towards the battle. Does Satan just go, and the devil, the demonic realm, does it just go, oh, okay, that's cool, no, that's good? No, it comes to meet you. It comes to defy you some more. Because remember, fear takes the shape of the battle you don't feel equipped to fight. And God is committed to breaking you through, and the enemy is committed to keeping you bound. So watch this. He kept coming closer to David. He looked David over. He sized him up, which didn't take long. Let's just be honest, especially from that angle, right? It's just like this. And saw that he was little more than a boy, glowing with health and handsome, and he despised him. We're going to come back to that in a second. Why does this physical specimen, this monstrosity of a man, look down on this boy, notice he's healthy, and despise him? We'll come back to that in a minute. That's a clue. He said to David, am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. Come here, he said, I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals. Do you understand that the closer you get to a breakthrough that God has in your life, the more intense the opposition becomes? Do you understand that? This is where we back off. This is where we go, whoa, I'm out. This is where we get to the edge of the 10-meter diving board, and the people and the last guy went splat, and the people from the side are going, you're going to die, don't do. This is where the opposition hits us, and we go, and we pull back from that very moment, and all we had to do was step off, and God would do his thing. This is where the opposition is the fiercest. And do you understand that fear always finds a voice? You will either hear it in your heart, you will have thoughts go through your mind about what could happen and what will probably happen and where you'll end up if it doesn't turn out, and how could you're silly for even considering this. Or if you've got that inward voice settled, you're not listening to the voice of the enemy in your heart, then it'll be David's brothers from the side going, why are you even here? You're not even a warrior. It might even be King Saul, the guy who's supposed to fight the battle, going, you can't do it. And he's not listening to any of those voices. And then he's facing his fear, and fear itself is going, you can't do this. I'm going to eat you for breakfast. Why is the fear intensifying? Let me ask you a question. Let's just back up from the physical story here. What's happening in the spiritual realm right now? What's happening is that the enemy is terrified with every step that David's taking towards that giant. But do you know why? That giant is a farce. Hey, we sometimes think of like Marvel superheroes and giant and the Hulk, and that's not how it works physically, folks. When somebody's 9 feet tall, they've got all kinds of physical problems. When you're 9 feet tall, your heart is too small for your body. You got to take things in small steps. This is not a guy who can even throw that spear very far. He's bluffing. He's probably never even had to fight. I know it's a weird take on the Goliath thing, but look, he looks at David, he looks down on him and saw that he was healthy and despised him because he's not healthy. See, the enemy's hoping, turn around, boy, turn around, boy, turn around, boy, because he's not going to be able to face David down. And the demonic realm, they know it better than ever because they know where David's coming from. They know he's walking in faith. They know he gets it. God did the lion, God did the bear. This Philistine will be the same. They know it. Believe me, they know it. So he's blustering and he's making all kinds of noise, trying to get David to turn around and tuck his tail in and go back up the hill with everybody else so that they can be in charge. But David's not living in fear. David's empowered by courage. And David calls his bluff. Remember this guy? How many of you know who this is? This is Andre the Giant. A monstrosity of a man. This is the closest to Goliath that you will ever see in your lifetime. He had to walk with a cane. He had heart problems. He died at a young age. Had all kinds of joint issues and bone issues and spine issues. Goliath was far taller than him. They literally put this guy out there as a hood ornament that looks scary, hoping that people would back down. And again, David calls his bluff. David said to the Philistine, okay, I'm not going to do this section of scripture justice, but this is way better than the Braveheart speech. I should probably get Tori to practice this. Knock it out of the park. Yeah, I'm not doing that. Not doing that. But are you ready? You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. And this day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. And this very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there's a God in Israel, and those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. That'd be a mic drop. And at this moment, folks, the battle's already over. Do you know why it's over? Because the real battle is against fear. He's already won. Well, what happens? We're going to get into it a little bit. But in a way, it doesn't matter. See, because the outcome is not what determines the victory. Do you know that? If you're fighting fear, it's not the outcome that determines the victory. It's the fact that you faced fear down. That's the victory. So now then he goes and he mops it up, right? But here's what I want to say. Notice what he did. We answer fear with authority, not aggression. Not by trying to pull together all the energy you can in yourself. He understood, yes, God did this, God will do that. He did the 3 meter, the 5 meter, 10 meter, no problem. Whatever he's put into my hands, we're good. This is going to turn out well. But at the end of the day, the battle's the Lord's. And it's in his name that we conquer, or not. It's in his name. It's not that God fills David up and David now is empowered in and of himself to conquer this. No. David faced down the fear in the name of the God of Israel. Boom. Battle's over. Now we mop up. So, as the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Again, this is a guy, there's no hesitation. In this whole story, there's not a moment of hesitation. So the outcome, if you want to say it, is already determined. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead, and the stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood, look at this, and stood over the giant. The little boy stood over the giant, the embodiment of fear that had kept the Israelites in bondage. The little boy is standing over the fear. And he took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from the sheath, and after he killed him, he cut off his head with a sword. What do you think the Israelites were doing at that moment? What do you think the Philistines were doing? At first I thought there'd be a huge battle cry. And I thought, nope. I think they're standing there going. And then you get the guys on the sides going, yeah, I was totally going to go just before he showed up. I was going to volunteer, but you first, you know. And King Saul is probably going, yay, oh, right? Like, because he's supposed to be the one. So look at this. Everyone else on the battlefield in the Israelite army has regret that day. Not David. Because he chose from a grid of courage, not fear. Not fear. How many of you know that the moment you face that fear and you cut off its head, or whatever image you want to use, that's pretty graphic. That feeling of exhilaration when you do the thing that's held you captive, when you step out and that you step out in faith and do that thing that God's called you to do, and you're not bound by fear, and you go further from home than you've ever been, that moment is exhilarating. And while everyone ran on the coattails of David's courage, because courage is contagious just like fear is, that moment of exhilaration, of stepping through fear, like literally marching right through it, only one person got that experience that day. Just one. Just one. Now back to you. What shape is your fear taking today, this week, this month, this season of your life? What battle or what valley are you facing that scares you because you don't know if you're equipped to face it? What's the fear been saying to you? Because fear speaks. What's it been saying? What's it been telling you? Maybe it's telling you don't have what it takes. Turn around and go back home. You're not going to make it. This time, God's not going to come through. What's it saying? I want you to look at David's life, and I want you to learn something. Again, this is for young and old. I love this story because he's but a boy. Or it could have been a girl. Would have been even more epic, probably. Right? It's like brave. But the idea is this. All of us face fears that stand up and challenge us and box us in and make us retreat. And if we understand, whoa, I can leverage the things I've seen God do against this battle. Those are prophetic. They prophesy an even bigger breakthrough. So even though they're kind of the same, but they're different, and this is way harder, no. That's the same God who did this. The same God is going to handle this situation. And then you go, oh, but I wish, where was that sword when I needed it? David's like, no, I'll just mop up with the sword. We're waiting around. I need a sword. I need armor. I need more money. I need more friends. I need more popularity. I need momentum. I need. And God's going, just look around. I put in your hands what you need to take the next step, or I wouldn't have asked you to take it. But you're like, but I don't have any stones. Then you will when you get there. But trust me on this. And at the end of the day, it's not your battle anyways. It's in the name of the Lord. Now, some of you sitting here might be saying, that's great. That's awesome. Problem is, I've never jumped off the 3. I've never jumped off the 5 or the 7.5. I have no if this, then, or if then this. I don't have any thens. What do I do? So I'm facing this struggle, and I'm raw. Like I'm coming at it brand new. I don't have any God did this and God did this. Yes, you do. You do. Or you can. See, if you put your faith in Jesus, what you have is you have the Son of God facing down death himself on that cross. The power of sin, the power of the devil and all the forces of hell itself. All of that. Jesus fights that battle. And he dies on the cross, absorbing all of that impact, all of that dread, all of that fear, all of that. Rises from the grave, seated in the heavenly places at the right hand of God, and then says, if you put your faith in me, my victory's yours. So feel free at any time to Satan's going, you've never done the 3, you've never done the 5, and I can go, but in Jesus, I've done this to 10,000. And if Jesus can defeat death, if Jesus can defeat hell, if he can defeat the devil himself, man, this is nothing. This uncircumcised Philistine, this challenge that's standing in front of me, in the name of Jesus, you are done. You are done. I'm walking through. And again, I'm not saying that everything's going to turn out wonderful. At the end of the battle, there are probably lots of bodies lying around, and it can be messy. But the real battle was not mopping up the Philistines. It was fighting and defeating fear. And that happened the moment David stood up to the giant. So, we've got an opportunity right now to do something with your giant. You can name him. Right? You can go, it's my finances, or it's this challenge of loneliness in my life, or it's this in-between time where I don't know where I fit in the world, or it's whatever it is, it makes me afraid. I'm afraid of this, I'm afraid of that. You go, no. I'm going to fight this. I'm not going to walk in trembling like Saul and the rest of the army. I'm going to come in like David because I know what I'm basing my confidence on. It's not me, it's him.